So America is in the war. The Allies have panicked after Russia has quit and they're worried about losing the war. We always forget we know who won the war because it was in the past. But at the time, it seemed perfectly likely the other side would win. Both sides are completely exhausted. And here comes this massive American army that's fresh. It's ready to go. It has not been living in trenches and under piles of bodies, literally, in frozen water, covered in rats for years like the European soldiers have. They're just arriving on the scene. German submarines have been limiting British supply lines, and so U.S. destroyers began attacking the U-boats. And this is really America's first significant contribution to the war. We put deep mines in the North Sea so surface ships wouldn't hit them, but the U-boats will. In April of 1917, U-boats sink 900,000 tons of Allied shipping. By December of 1917, that number's 350,000 tons. By October of 1918, 112,000 tons. This reduction in the amount of tonnage sunk by the Germans is directly related to America's help. In November of 1917, Vladimir Lenin, the new leader of the Soviet Russia, will sign a peace treaty with the Central Powers, officially ending Russia's involvement in the war. The troops that Germany and Austria had fighting the Russians in the east are now able to come west, and the Allies simply have no reserves. The America's dream that their involvement in the war could be strictly limited to a naval engagement evaporates, and we install a national draft to raise soldiers to go assist the Allies now that the troops that have been fighting Russia are moving west. There are a lot of protests against these drafts. They were actually very unpopular. In May of 1917, the Selective Service Act drafted it said the Army needed to expand to 3 million soldiers. 2 million Americans joined voluntarily, but we had to draft the rest. In the spring of 1918, General Blackjack Pershing, the guy who led our forces into Mexico chasing Pancho Villa, will take the American Expeditionary Force to France. In June, American soldiers will repel Germans at the Battle of the Chateau Thierry. I think that's how you say it. In July, we'll turn the Germans at Reims. And by July of 1918, the American forces have helped to stop the Soviet advance into Western Europe. September 26 of 1918, 1 million American soldiers will engage the German army in the Argonne Forest. By Halloween, so about a month later, the Germans are completely pushed out of France with their supply lines cut. Pershing, the general, begins to demand an invasion of France. But before we can invade France, Germany surrenders. The Allies agree, and on November 11th of 1918 at 11:11 a.m., so 11:11, the war officially comes to an end when Germany surrenders. Now, Germany agrees to surrender because they believe they're going to get Woodrow Wilson's peace terms, and we'll get into that in just a little bit. The war featured all kinds of new technology, which is going to make the war, for one thing, far more deadly. We're going to see trench warfare be the main way of fighting. You dig in lines underground so you're protected from any enemy attack. This had been pioneered, of course, by Ulysses S. Grant way back in the Civil War. Machine guns and artillery will also come to dominate the war. These are massively destructive offensive weapons that make the death toll much higher than it would have been otherwise. Open assaults against fortified positions are futile. They just lead to slaughters of the attackers. Tanks, flamethrowers, and gas, poison gas, all make the trenches kill zones as well. Manufacturing and engineers technology becomes the key to winning wars, less so necessarily than, say, the skill or bravery of your soldiers. In fact, operations frequently have to stop because of supply or engineering problems, and logistics become everything to waging a war. Planes, of course, are very primitive, but there's no anti-aircraft fire at all, so they're extremely effective. Bombers are simply regular planes like you see here, where they just take their hands and drop little bombs over the side. Fighters duel over the front. It doesn't have a great impact on the war, but it is real romantic, and the soldiers in the trenches like to go out and watch the fighter planes duel each other. The primary function of planes, though, was reconnaissance. They could go and see what the enemy was up to and then come back and report. The Navy was the most modern part of the war. By now we have turbines for propellers on our ships, hydraulic guns, wireless radio, electric lights. We have the subs are diesel. We're moving away from steam towards diesel engines. And so the Navy would probably be the most technologically advanced part of the war. This increase in technology led to incredible casualties. 9 million people die as a result of World War I. The United Kingdom loses 1 million. France loses 1.7 million. Germany loses 2 million. Hungary loses 1.5 million. Italy loses 500,000. American casualties are 112,000. And while that's a lot of people, it's much less than the other participants in the war. And keep in mind, the other participants fought for almost 5 years. We fought for about 5 months. More deadly than the war, actually, was the Spanish flu in 1918. The flu, which comes around every year, sometimes it mutates into deadly forms. The deadliest flu we've ever seen is the 1918 Spanish flu. Half of American casualties in World War I actually died of the flu, not from combat. In fact, the flu killed somewhere between 50 million and 100 million people worldwide. Get this, World War I killed about 0.5% of the population of the world. Spanish flu killed about 6% of the population of the entire world. That means that the Spanish flu was 12 times deadlier than World War I. A lot of people don't realize that, but I find that amazing.